Welcome to day 6 of the 25 Days of Flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar. Happy holidays. Today I'm going to ask you, parlez-vous français? And that should give you a big hint as to the flow for today. For December 6th, our flow is going to enable us to set up a button that will translate any text into French. Now, we kicked it up a little notch here in that not only will it translate this into French, but it will send you a sound bite too, which is an MP3 file that you can use to listen to how that word sounds in that language and maybe practice your language skills. Those of you that are learning English as a second language, this would be a great way to listen and repeat and get better at speaking English, for instance. As we get started today, I do want to give you a hint that later on in these 25 days of flows, we will kick this up another notch, and we're going to work with language detection, and that is super fun too. So let's get started for today and see if I can keep my deadline of 15 minutes. Today's connector is the Microsoft Translator. The flow that you may download includes also connections to SharePoint, notifications, and mail. And that is totally optional. Where you work with this translator is entirely up to you. There's no constraints around which one of our connectors you might combine it with. I just happened to do SharePoint today because I'm going to store that MP3 file on SharePoint. I'm using notifications because I want to have this button handy for me on my phone. And I'm using mail because I actually want to enable myself to follow up on this notification and practice pronouncing the word with the sound bite that will be delivered to me by email. So let's take a look at the flow. So off we go to Microsoft Flow, Power Automate. We're working on a flow in Power Automate. And here you can see that I'm starting with a button. And of course, I'm starting with a button because I want this to be an instant flow that I can use wherever I am, whether it be a digital button or I'm using it on the browser, okay? Now, of course, I bet you can guess from the first instant flow we did yesterday that we're going to add a prompt to this trigger. So if I click on this, you'll see that I've added the word prompt. Remember that you can always add, I have to fix this. I think I had first done it in Spanish and then I decided to change it to French, but this could be anything you want. You could be changing it to German, whatever you'd like. This add an input thing is like diamonds to me. It's worth so much because I can prompt anyone with a button, which means I can have a UI with my flow that I can use to get information from my end user. So I love using prompts. In this case, I've used the text prompt, and you can see that I just called it word. I could call it sentence. I could call it text. It could just say text, right? But whatever I put in this box, there's a little prompt here. I also try to edit the right side. Sometimes it's easy to think about only editing the name of the prompt, but the text on the right is the hint text or the placeholder text that they'll see so that they can get clarification on what is this thing that I should be typing. And so this one says, please enter the word or sentence you would like translated into French. I suppose there's probably a maximum number of words that I did not look up, but we could definitely check that in our trigger documentation. All right, so now we have a prompt. The next action we add is the Microsoft Translator. So I just want to show you, let's take a look at the Microsoft Translator connector. So up here in the connector section, you'll notice that there's two. There's Microsoft Translator and Microsoft Translator V2. V2 is premium, so if I click on that, you'll see all of the different actions that are on that right now, and I don't see any triggers. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the one that's not premium. So Microsoft Translator. And then we're going to use the one that's not V2 today. And notice that we have 5 actions. We have detect language, text to speech, text, get languages, and get speech languages. And today we're going to use text to speech and translate. But in a couple of days, we'll be also using the others. Okay, because there's a lot of fun things you can do with this particular trigger. I like it a lot. And I don't see any triggers there, so I think this connector, that's what I meant to say, only has actions. Again, remember that you can check your docs just by clicking on the action and hitting the I. And if I click learn more, it'll take me to the docs page in our connector references. It is always a good idea to take a peek at it. I mentioned this on day 1. At least read the description to find out what the dependencies are. Find out what your limits are. So you can only have 2 connections per account. So that's a limitation. You can create a key with a subscription key, and then the limits will be based on that subscription key. So all the limits outside of that key that are mentioned on this page refer to the key that it is provisioned for you if you don't provide a subscription key. And I think it says that right here. If no subscription key is provided, the shared API key will be used, which comes with built-in throttling limits based on the number of characters that are being translated. Specifically, 55,000 characters per day and 100 requests per minute. But if you provide your own subscription key, there are no character limits used by the connector, and the rate limit will be raised to 1,000 requests per minute. In this case, the translator API will enforce limits based on your subscription, and it gives you a nice link to the page that talks about that. And we can see over here on the right too that I was correct. There are no triggers, only actions. And if you want to check flows, I'm gonna go to the template page. Let's do a quick check and see if we have any templates. So if I go in here and I type Microsoft Translator, we do have some templates. So again, it's always fun to go and check, what do we have? I'm gonna just use Translator because Microsoft can be, What do we have that you could get started using right away? Here's one that looks really promising over here. Translate foreign language emails into English. Sometimes I get emails. I've once got an email in Japanese from one of my favorite people too. Hiro, he's awesome. But I can read them. So this would have been helpful. I could translate it, and then I could even push the translation into a OneNote file or whatever. So lots of fun stuff in here, and we will be doing some stuff in a few days with detection. So check out the templates in the meantime. Okay, let's do the flow. Let's see how fast we can do it. So it's already done. So I'm just going to walk through this one because it's so simple. This is really a 3-minute flow. So I added the action translate text, and then the text to be translated, I just put the dynamic tag that came from the trigger. So based over here, you look for the word that or whatever you called it, and then you put that right there. I'm targeting French, but we could always target something else. In this case, I'm telling it what the source language is. But here's the tip I want you to know. You can enter a custom value and put a detected language there. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Then there's a category. I haven't really used that, but it defaults to general. And then the content type, I leave it HTML, even though it also has a plain option. Okay, so there's my text. So the result of this guy will be the translated text. Now, I want to take that text. I added another action called text to speech, and I popped in the translated text from the translate text action. So now I have the translated text in there, and I'm going to tell it what language that is. I happen to know it's French because that's what we did. And then I can select what format I want this text-to-speech to be in. WAV is the lightest, but MP3 probably has the higher quality. And then you can pick quality options here so that you don't have, humongous files, right? Depending on how much text you translated, that could get pretty large, all right? So now we've got our text translated in this action, and then we took that text and turned it into an MP3 file. What are we going to do with that file? I just don't want it hanging around in my flow. So I'm going to create a file from that. I'm going to name it the name of the text. And this is probably a little bit dangerous because what if that text was a paragraph? Then we'd have a file name that's ridiculous. And by the way, it would actually provoke an error in many cases if the symbols within the text are not accepted by the place where you're storing the file. So there are some limitations as to what symbols can be in a file name. So I might do something slightly different there now that I'm thinking about it. You guys increase my ability to think whenever I'm recording a video. But maybe I would just do a truncated version. So maybe I would use a substring and just get the first 10 letters of it. Do something like that. And then I actually gave it the file type. And then the file content comes out of the text-to-speech above this. It's the audio file. So now I've actually put it on one of my demo sites in SharePoint. And so this shared document library just holds all these MP3s. I could also set up a flow that would archive that shared document library every month, maybe get rid of them because maybe I don't need them permanently. So I might set up flow to delete them, to clear out that library once a month, for instance. Just a side thought. Then I'm getting the properties of that. And the reason I'm getting the properties of that is that I actually would like to get a link to the file. All right. So I want to point out something interesting here. That's a heads up for you. When you use the create file action for SharePoint, the folder path is shared documents. So this means this is that default document library you get just because you made a SharePoint site. But the display name for that library is documents. So it's like this library has a couple of names. The create file uses the folder path, which is including the internal name of that library, which is shared documents. But when you get properties, you will only get in this drop-down the list of display names. So just be aware that up here you'll say shared documents, down here you'll say documents. If it's a folder that you made or a library that you made, then you'll see whatever you used your first time when you named it. All right, just something I wanted to point out to you because it's slightly different, but it's talking about the same library. All right, then in here it wants the ID of the file, and we get that from our create file action. That's what spits out that ID, and we put that right there. And we're done. So we took the text, we translated it, we converted it to an MVP file so we could listen to it. Then we stored it in SharePoint so that we'd have a reasonable place to keep it. I would not attach this to an email because it would make the email too heavy. So I'm going to do two things now. I'm going to send the push notification to my phone. This way, if I put the word in my phone and then I pressed my button would give me an immediate answer back. And I chose to put the word from the trigger. So I used the word from the trigger. So I made sure I used the dynamic tag from manually trigger a flow. And I used the name I named that prompt word. Then I put a dash, and then I followed it with the translated text, right? Because I don't want to put the MP3 up here yet. I want to just get the translated text, and that's in the section called translate text. So that's that action right there. And so I put that there. So now the first thing I'm going to see on my phone is the word I asked for, a dash, and the translation. Then I'm adding a link to the item. Now, this is not such a great thing on your phone. it's doable, it works, but I like to do it mostly in email because then I can explain it better, and also I'm sure that the link will take me to the place I want to go. So I will often add the link here, which I must have forgotten to do because I thought I had done that. So we'll do that together now. We'll just go down here to the create file the create file properties, because that's where we can get the link. So this one is get file properties, because the create doesn't actually give you the link, but the file properties do. And I just click link to item, and now I can also get the link to that. Oh, I might have attached it. Literally, I see what happened. I attached it. Yeah, and I don't think I would do that. Actually, what I'm saying, if this was a real work assignment, I might not attach it, because depending on how heavy this gets, this could make my email quota go out of whack. Okay, so sometimes what you can do is not always the best thing to do. So let's test it out. And just, I'm going to put here happy holidays. And I have no idea how that's going to translate into French. Maybe bonne fête. I haven't tried it yet, but let's do happy holidays. I'm going to do run flow. It's going to run really quickly because this is a fairly easy flow. And there we go. And so on my mobile phone, it did pop up. Now let's look at the mail real quick, because that one has more in it. Happy holidays. And the subject is happy holidays. And I forgot to change Spanish to French. But then down here, joyeuse fête. So I was close. Okay, so the happy holidays in French is joyeuse fête. And then if I want to hear that, I can click
joyeuse fête
and listen as many times as I want.
Joyeuse fête. Joyeuse fête.
Isn't that nice? So I can practice until I sound really good, right? FYI, I'd like you to put in the comments something for me. I'm considering opening up a playlist that is Francophone, so that I can do videos for Montreal, France, Africa, and all the French-speaking lands, like Morocco, too. If you're interested in a French playlist all about flow, please put it in the comments below. Let me know if that would be worth my effort, because I definitely would enjoy doing it. So that's the end of day 6 for the 25 days of flows, the Power Automate Advent Calendar. I hope you enjoy translating words and paragraphs and learning more about the Microsoft Translator connector. Happy holidays, and I'll be talking to you tomorrow when we do day 7 of the 25 days of flows. Enjoy!